Hello, everyone, and welcome. Some of the stories we have for you right now. A widening Team Canada approach to the tariff threat.
When our backs are up against the wall, we will all stand together.
Sharing strategies at all levels, staring down the ticking clock.
I think they need to shed a lot of their business.
Canada Post delivers more layoffs, what it could mean for the Crown Corporation.
You're going to get some products that offend some.
Shock over Amazon Canada's prime offerings of 51st state merchandise.
Our sun will shine in my
Plaza poignant birthday message then and now, reflecting on the legacy of reggae legend Bob Marley.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Canadian officials are operating as if Donald Trump's tariffs will go into effect on March the 3rd, and with the threat of a trade war hanging over us. The Prime Minister met today with big city mayors. Key cabinet ministers are providing updates on their meetings in Washington, and preparations are underway for Friday's Canada-U.S. summit. There is also movement on policing the Canada-U.S. border, and a negative side effect to those possible tariffs, companies preemptively laying off workers. We begin our coverage with CTV's Mike LeCouture on today's developments and more. Mike.
Well, Sandy, as the clock continues to tick on the new tariff deadline, politicians at all levels are attempting to insulate their economies in case U.S. President Donald Trump follows through on his threat. Behind the handshakes and camaraderie is concern over punishing tariffs. The Prime Minister huddled with the mayors of Canada's largest cities to make a plan for a possible trade war with the U.S. And Justin Trudeau wants them to leverage relationships across the border.
You are the ones who decide whether your lucrative procurement contract goes to a firm in Moose Jaw or Montana. You are the ones who put local diplomacy in action.
The mayors are already doing that type of work.
We can arm the Team Canada approach with real on-the-ground examples of how tariffs will hurt our local economy.
Even the threat of tariffs already is. Montreal-based Sheartex is laying off 40% of its staff because the tights manufacturer says additional costs could be too much to bear.
This could have massive tens of millions of dollar impact on our financial forecasts.
Mr. Greer, I would welcome you.
The tariff impact on American businesses was highlighted during the confirmation hearings for Donald Trump's new trade representative. However, Jamieson Greer brought it back to the border.
The action that the president is talking about is about fentanyl, where we don't want another single fentanyl death.
Keen to show work is being done, Mounties went public with 3 recent incidents where they intercepted migrants at the Canada-U.S. border. In an interview on CTV's Power Play, the RCMP commissioner said 35% more personnel have been moved to the border from other areas.
We have to be flexible as an organization, and this is not different for any law enforcement, to be able to redeploy resources to a priority with minimal impact on what we're doing.
The commissioner says it's a delicate balance, but he insists the shift in resources will not impact public safety in other areas. Sandy?
Okay, Mike, thank you. Now, Canada Post has fired off layoff notices to managers in key cities. It's part of corporate-wide restructuring, but it comes after a long strike by unionized workers. CTV's Rachel Aiello now on the implications for the future of Canada Post. Rachel.
Sandy, Canada Post let nearly 50 management employees go this week, but the mail carrier insists the latest layoffs won't impact service.
Close to half of the impacted employees were in Ottawa, the others from across the country. The layoffs are just the latest in a corporate-wide restructuring, seeing Canada Post eliminate 20% of its senior executive roles last month. Bleeding hundreds of millions annually, Canada Post has had a management hiring freeze in place since last year. In a statement to CTV News, Canada Post said these decisions are never easy, but they reflect the critical financial situation the corporation is currently facing. Canada Post's long-term viability has been a key sticking point in strike negotiations with the workers' union. The federal government recently extended the embattled Crown Corporation a $1 billion lifeline. But it won't be enough to solve Canada Post's structural issues, with couriers like UPS and FedEx competing for customers. Experts say the company's prognosis could be terminal if it doesn't adapt fast.
I think they need to shed a lot of their business and recognize that the stuff that's causing the biggest losses is the stuff they can't come back from.
Canada Post is still struggling to catch up on mail delivery after the month-long strike just before the holidays. CTV News recently sent letters out to stations across the country, and for some of them, it took weeks to arrive. Sandy?
All right, Rachel, thank you. Now, of the many things that Donald Trump has said since retaking the White House, his taunts about Canada becoming a 51st state have riled many north of the border. Well, Amazon is selling merchandise emblazoned with the offending proposition. CTV's Adrian Gobriel on how that is adding insult to injury for many Canadians. Adrian.
Sandy, for weeks now, we've heard the U.S. president muse about Canada becoming the 51st state. Well, now it appears that his pitch has been pressed onto hats, T-shirts and sweaters, just to name a few. Type in the word 51st state on Amazon.ca and take a look at what pops up. There's Maple Leaf 51st state pins, bumper stickers, and even flags with an eagle covering the maple leaf. One retail analyst we spoke with says it's unlikely Amazon will remove these items from their website, even if they appear to be promoting the annexation of Canada.
What Amazon does is they kind of don't get involved in things unless they feel that the products are violent or hatred-filled or have some negative sexual connotation. Other than that, they kind of leave it to everyone to sort of buy and sell as they wish.
Amazon's offensive products policies in part state that items that promote, incite, or glorify hatred, violence, or organizations with such views will be removed. CTV News reached out to Amazon Canada and asked if any of these items meet their offensive products threshold. They've told us they're looking into it, but have yet to answer our questions. Retail analysts note that as long as there's some support for the policies coming out of the White House, there will be a market for items trumpeting Trump's ideas. In some cases, controversy sells.
Right.
Sandy.
All right, Adrian, thank you. And Donald Trump loves to court controversy. Today, he elaborated on his plans to temporarily resettle Palestinians and rebuild Gaza, posting on Truth Social this morning that the territory would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon on the ongoing global opposition to Trump's plan. Joy.
Sandy, the U.S. president is not backing away from his plan to take over Gaza.
At a prayer breakfast, Donald Trump spoke about the attempt on his life and his belief in divine destiny.
It changed something in me, I feel even stronger.
And more determined, it seems, for the U.S. to take ownership of war-torn Gaza, home to 2 million Palestinians. Trump posted on social media, the Gaza Strip would be turned over to the United States by Israel at the conclusion of fighting. No soldiers by the U.S. would be needed. Stability for the region would reign. Walking back U.S. military intervention, but restating his plan to develop Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East and resettling Palestinians elsewhere in the region. This after Western and Arab countries condemned the idea as a violation of international law. Protesters in Gaza say they're not leaving. This is their land. We reject the criminal, hellish plan Donald Trump spoke of, says this man. And Hamas, at war with Israel, called on all Palestinians to rise up if Trump tries to expel them. Up on Capitol Hill, Israel's prime minister embraced Trump's proposal. His government already drafting an exit plan for Palestinians to leave voluntarily.
The actual idea of allowing first Gazans who want to leave. I mean, what's wrong with that? They can leave, they can then come back, they can relocate and come back, but you have to rebuild Gaza.
Trump's proposal shocked the Middle East, even as the White House tries to soften the president's approach. Many worry this could weaken the already fragile ceasefire in Gaza. Sandy?
CTV's Joy Malbon. More Canadian reaction to Donald Trump's latest musings on taking over Gaza. Our ambassador to the United Nations says Canada has supported a two-state solution.
We all agree there has to be a reconstruction of Gaza. I think most countries have taken the position, and Canada certainly has taken the position, that the reconstruction of Gaza should be part of a broader reconstruction of the Palestinian state, and that there should be an opportunity for the Palestinians to be able to have that.
Bob Marley says one of the key issues right now is ensuring there is a second phase of the ceasefire and not a return to war. Now, there are growing fears that the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs could take a bite out of Canada's housing market, especially if we find ourselves in a trade war. Already, new construction is slowing down, and the expectation, according to Canada Housing and Mortgage, is it will continue for several years. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth has the reasons behind the trend and what needs to be done. Paul.
Sandy, this news comes at a time when the federal government is predicting housing numbers much higher than those released by the CMHC. According to the CMHC, construction projects for houses will drop off over the next several years but remain above their 10-year average. Last year, the federal government's housing plan predicted more than 500,000 housing construction projects would start per year until 2031. However, based on CMHC's latest forecast, 2025 will see fewer than 250,000 homes built, less than 240,000 in 2026, and the next year will see fewer than 235,000 new homes under construction in Canada. Developer Vadi Fairs says the GST-HST holiday has been a boost for the construction industry. However, a labor shortage, overseas supply chain issues, and a potential trade war have caused a slowdown.
With all the new policies on immigration, and the interest rate is still, very high. So really, the projects, they're coming in at a very high cost.
The CMHC also reports detached and semi-detached homes are still being built at a high rate, especially when it comes to more affordable row houses.
The demand is still there. The opportunity is still there.
CMHC's latest forecast also predicts rental affordability in Canada will improve in the near future based on higher vacancy rates across the country. Sandy.
Okay, Paul, thank you. Now, the RCMP in New Brunswick was on the lookout for two suspects after shots were fired in a rural community near Moncton. Police say 50-year-old Leo Caraway and a second man could be heading towards Edmundston in a light-colored pickup. Several schools were placed under hold and secure, meaning nobody was permitted to enter or exit as the situation unfolded. Coming up, preventing winter from grounding travel plans.
Making sure that surface is safe and operational for aircraft to take off and land.
Inside the winter operations of Canada's biggest airport. Pearson International near Toronto is the country's biggest and busiest airport. And in the dead of winter, it takes an army of snowplows to keep it running. CTV's Mike Walker got rare access and gives us a behind-the-scenes look.
On a day like this, it's all hands on deck for the airfield maintenance crew at Pearson Airport.
As soon as it's kind of hitting on the radar, we're out there trying to get ahead of it.
Morning, ground inspection 94.
We're riding along with Airfield Technical Inspector Paul Atwell
333 left.
as he inspects the runways in between flights.
We're looking for any FOD on a runway and then looking for any winter contaminants to report. We do this every 4 hours or as required in the winter. No stopping on a runway.
He's in constant communication with the Air Traffic Control Tower and the Maintenance Control Center that deploys crews when a problem is identified. With flights taking off and landing every minute at the country's busiest airport, it's a critical job.
If you think of that from the pilot's point of view, they're waiting to get that inspection before they're setting up to land, so they know what are the conditions they're expecting to land on, and all the people in the aircraft, it's their safety really that we're talking about here.
The weather today presenting a mixed bag of conditions and challenges. About 2 centimeters of snow fell this morning. These massive plows were out immediately, working in tandem, responsible for clearing about 5 million square meters. That's the equivalent of 3,300 NHL rinks.
We're about 15 minutes of runway, which is about an hour and a half for an entire loop of the field.
But late this morning, conditions changed to freezing drizzle.
So these are more hard to manage in a way because you're not sure what you're going to get out of it.
With these conditions, there are delays. Every aircraft must pass through the de-icing facility before takeoff. Today, each de-icing pad is operational.
Depends on how much ice or buildup of snow, but it's anywhere from 6 to 15 minutes.
Over the past 2 years, Pearson has expanded its fleet that now totals 161 pieces of snow clearing equipment.
Some of that is to combat that sort of shift we're having in the climate. We're getting a lot wetter, heavier snow, which is different to deal with than dry, fluffy snow. The quicker we can get what we need to do done, the less delays you have, the quicker aircraft get out.
The biggest test of the season yet will be on Saturday with as much as 10 centimeters of snow in the forecast.
We're already organizing crews, making sure we have enough chemical on site, starting to plan if there's any issues with, do we have too many aircraft going out that time, and we have to space them out a little bit.
An around-the-clock job preparing for all scenarios to keep air traffic moving.
Mike Walker, CTV News, Toronto.
Still ahead, a Canadian recipe for viral success. Meet Mrs. Brown and all the ingredients to cook up a major fan base. Bad news for beer drinkers in the East. Guinness taps are running dry.
Guinness is extremely popular here. This is by far our #1 selling beer in this bar. Our guests are disappointed. We're disappointed that we can't serve an iconic Irish beer in an iconic Irish bar.
Halifax pubs stocked up ahead of the holidays after word of a Guinness shortage in the UK. But now those supplies have dwindled and bar owners there are hoping a new shipment comes in next week. Firefighters in BC were called on for an unusual rescue. Using some ropes, members of the Kamloops Fire Rescue Team helped pull and slide a deer that was stuck in a frozen river to safety.
I heard some more banging, so I looked outside and I saw the individual beating up Santa pretty good.
And a Santa statue spreading a year-round cheer in Winnipeg became the target of a Grinch this week. The assault was captured on a couple's security camera. The statue had become a beloved mainstay in the neighborhood, but evidently not everyone is a fan. And it turns out there are plenty of fans for a woman who calls herself Mrs. Brown, whose cooking and baking videos are going viral. And thanks to her hungry followers, Mrs. Brown is getting more than a spoonful of social media fame. CTV's Garrett Barry now with the ingredients to Mrs. Brown's success story. Garrett.
Sandy, I know that not everybody across the country is familiar with the traditional Newfoundland Jigs dinner, so believe me when I tell you that Heather Brown's entry into the social media video world was almost a bit controversial.
That pressure cooker on the left filled with salt, meat, peas, then potatoes and carrots, this isn't the traditional way to prepare a Jigs dinner. When Heather Brown posted this video, it got about 600 views. It seemed like a lot at the time.
It was unintentional in the beginning. I just posted a video with clips of food and some trendy audio and didn't know much about it.
But it pales in comparison to what she might get now. One of this week's videos, 60,000 plays on TikTok alone. The followers are coming for Mrs. Brown's Kitchen in the thousands. Almost 500,000 people follow her page on Facebook.
A lot of people want easy and quick, and sometimes people are intimidated by complicated recipes, but I try to make it that they're not intimidating or not stressful.
The videos took off when Brown finally got the nerve to feature herself front and center in the posts. It's become like a full-time job, filling Brown's days while she's juggling further education. But Brown has leveraged her budding fame into a cookbook, which will be released in Newfoundland and Labrador this fall.
And I'm used to being able to talk through the steps, and now I have to put it into like sentence form. It's definitely a learning curve.
If there's a secret ingredient to her social media success, it's in the recipe selection. Brown says she tries to keep it simple, clear, enjoyable for her viewers. Sandy.
All right, Garrett. This is a big day for fans of the legendary Bob Marley, and there are millions of them, myself included. Today we are remembering the king of reggae and what would have been his 80th birthday.
Get up, stand up. Stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up. Don't give up the fight.
Marley was a musical genius and a towering global figure. He died of cancer at the age of 36. And to celebrate his legacy, a worldwide sing-along was led by the world's largest children's choir, Young Voices. And after the break, we'll go back in time 47 years ago when I was lucky enough to interview him. As the world marks what would have been the remarkable Bob Marley's 80th birthday, we are dipping back into the CTV News archives way back to 1978 when a young Sandy Ronaldo interviewed the reggae legend. Here's part of that report as we say goodbye. Enjoy.
A couple of years ago, no one would have believed that this tribe of Jamaican musicians would be packing Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens. It's a sign of reggae's growing acceptance in the international pop music scene. And it's also catapulted this man, Bob Marley, to superstardom. But reggae is not just a pop phenomenon. It's developed into a powerful force for political change, as powerful in its own way as the protest music of the 60s. This past April in Kingston, it created a truce in a country torn by political violence. Youth, tired of the constant political infighting, banded together in a mammoth reggae concert for peace. The man responsible for it all, they say, was Bob Marley. Bob, you've been labeled a powerful political individual. How do you regard that?
Well, I mean, yeah, we try to make really bring peace, knowing that we really can't solve a problem with a war, you know. It doesn't really solve a problem. We don't feel like really killing someone. Whose problem am I going to solve when I kill someone? You know what I mean?
There's no doubt Bob Marley knows how to use his music. 12,000 people came to hear him perform, and in a trance-like mystical state, he carried them with him and left them shouting for more. Despite this obvious commercial success, he appears to live the life he preaches. What do you do with the money that you make? Do you take it back to Jamaica? Do you give it to the people?
I give it away.
You give all your money away?
All the time, yeah.
How do you survive?
Oh, Rastafari is God.
Our sun will shine.